If we want to be healthy ministry leaders, I strongly believe that there are three big connections we must focus on. First, we have to be pursuing Jesus. And the other two connections we need are with a network of other youth leaders and a ministry coach or mentor. On this episode of Student Ministry Connection, we'll dive into how you can make both of those happen. Welcome to Student Ministry Connection, a podcast for those who serve in student ministry and also want to connect and grow. My name is Steve Cullum, and I've been serving in student ministry since 1999. And in addition to being a youth pastor myself, I also serve as a missionary with National Network of Youth Ministries. And beyond knowing God wants me in this position, I also serve youth leaders and establish or support networks of youth leaders because I believe they are vital to the health of youth ministry. In order to reach all the teenagers, there is no way that we can do that alone. Not only do we have limited capacity, but it will also burn us out. So in order to remain healthy, I believe we need to pursue three key relationships. The first is with Jesus, of course. The second is with a network of other youth leaders. And the third is with a ministry coach or mentor for one-on-one growth. So today I brought on my friend Dustin Fisher, who is a youth pastor in Colorado Springs, the network coordinator for their area, and a coach with Pact Ministry. We're going to dig into his story, his experience with networks, and talk about coaching in just a bit. But before we do that, I want to thank the sponsor of this episode. Ministry can be complicated to navigate, especially when you're juggling multiple jobs, roles, or youth ministry gatherings. Student Ministry Connection believes that the best leaders are healthy leaders, leaders who are able to lead from a place of abundance rather than exhaustion. And that's why we believe in G-Shades Youth Ministry Curriculum. With the release of Season 6, G-Shades is your simple solution for a gospel-centered youth ministry. Season 6 includes a year's worth of volunteer training resources, parent training resources, outreach events, discipleship events, and even 2 camps. Their curriculum is laser-focused on helping students see themselves, God, and others through the lens of the gospel, and it shows up in every topic, series, and week. And you can amplify your reach with G-Shade's engaging video messages, whether it's sharing the videos with your digital audience, giving parents a full preview of the content beforehand, or sending them out the next day to catch students up who missed out. G-Shades allows you to extend your ministry's reach, and that's not to mention the benefits of your students hearing the gospel preached from different voices and perspectives. There are lots of great youth ministry curriculums out there, but G-Shades sets itself apart because of a strong focus on the gospel. I've been so impressed with Mike and his team as they've created an amazing gospel-centered curriculum. So head over to gshades.org to catch your first glimpse of G-Shades with a 4-week free trial. And when it's time to buy, you can use the offer code CONNECTION for 10% off their top-tier curriculum. G-Shades, seeing life through the lens of the gospel. You can find the link to G-Shades in our podcast show notes. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, Dustin.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for having me.
Yeah. We were just chatting that this is one of the very few episodes that I've recorded with someone in person instead of on the computer. So
we get to be face to face.
Yeah. So yeah, we've had the privilege of knowing each other for probably like 6 years or so, which is pretty cool. So we're both in Colorado, of course, but just different parts of the state.
Yep.
And I happened to be down here for Refuel, the LeaderTrex conference, and decided to, hey, let's meet up, do lunch, and go record a podcast.
Yeah.
So.
No, appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So as always, I love to start off with our guest stories, just to get to know you a little bit more, but also just to hear what God's done in your life over the time. So yeah, feel free to go back as far as you want, but share how you ended up in a relationship with Jesus, but then also how you got called into ministry and how that all started.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll start at the very beginning. I was born here in Colorado, born and raised Colorado native, so there's not a ton of us, but there's a few. And just thank God that I was born into a Christian home, parents who loved the Lord, who were serving in even youth ministry from the time that I was a young child. And of course, far from perfect, but parents who love Jesus, and grew up in really the same church, kind of through all of my childhood and teenage years, really connected with ministry and had lots of opportunities being in youth ministry to just be discipled, poured into, all those things, including even an intern that was at our church who had gone to Ozark Christian College. And she was the one who really encouraged me and challenged me to look into that for my post-high school time. And so I ended up going to Ozark Christian College to pursue a degree in youth ministry, and I was there from 2002 to 2006. That's where I met my wife, Morgan, and then we got married right before our senior year of college, so we got to kind of just figure some life out. Those early days of college and marriage and cheap rent in Joplin, Missouri. I wish we could go back to those days.
Right.
But and then really been doing youth ministry ever since. God brought us back to Colorado from Missouri in 2007, and got to serve at a church for quite a long time. For 14 years was at a church, and then been at the church I'm currently at for just over 3 years. So we have 2 boys, 2 teenagers, which is a lot of fun because they're in our ministry, and they get to, we kind of have this dynamic of we do our family stuff, of course, but we also get to do ministry things as a family. And so that's really a sweet season where that has not always been the case. Of course, there's been a lot more challenges when our kids were young, but now with my wife serving in youth ministry and both of my boys being in high school, and it's a lot of fun to be in that season.
Yeah.
So, but I know I'll blink and they're going to be out of high school.
Sure.
And all that. So that's a very broad overview.
So remind me what ages are your kids again?
Yeah. So they're 14 and 16.
Okay.
Yeah. 9th grade and 11th grade.
Nice.
So my older son plays on the drum line. He loves that. Really has poured a lot of time and energy into that and built a lot of good friends. And then my youngest son just started high school this year, but he played soccer for the JV team and really enjoyed that. And yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't think I realized until this moment how much we had crossed over. So, because I was at Lincoln, I basically started a year before you.
Yeah.
And then, the loving rivalry between
That's
Lincoln
right.
and Ozark that
That's
was
right.
there. And then,
And one of those won out in the end because they kind of own the other one, right?
oh, yeah. We have to talk about that.
No, I do love that there was a partnership there that Lincoln's ministry got to continue.
Yeah.
Because Ozark was in a place where they could
Yeah.
take that, which I love, because both ministries have a lot of good things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was kind of one of those turning points. And I was like, okay, I can't talk bad about Ozark anymore because they absorbed our seminary and didn't let it die.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So what's your ministry look like here at Heart of the Springs?
Yeah. No, so I've just been here just over 3 years, and I tell you, it has been a huge blessing of being in. One of the things that really has turned into a blessing. At the time, I didn't know it, but previously I was at a larger church, and there was, of course, lots of good things about that, but also lots of challenging things. But now being in a church that's a little smaller really has just been a breath of fresh air, because it's easier to know more people. And not to say we're not ready and willing to grow when God would allow that. And of course, He's brought lots of great families here along the way, but just getting to know a higher percentage of the people and do life with them and be in, I think, more natural community with them. I guess it takes less work because the church is a little smaller. And so that has been a blessing, but also just healthy people, healthy leadership, healthy eldership, all those things that really has been incredible.
Yeah.
And really great. And again, there were lots of great things about where I was previously, but again, also challenges. And not to say there's not challenges here, because of course that's life and church and ministry. Right. So, but yeah, oversee our middle school and high school students here. That's my primary role. And then I have another piece of my role that is overseeing our groups and connection ministry and trying to help people get connected to Bible studies and home groups and all those things, and really just be a more integral part of the church body.
Cool.
So that's been fun too, to kind of course, youth ministry is my heart, but I know I've been challenged and growing in some roles that are outside of youth ministry a bit too.
Sure. And I'm guessing, as most people are probably listening, youth ministry is like we don't always like to say this, but it is the church within the church sort of thing,
Yeah.
where a church has all these different people that are doing all these different roles, and in youth ministry, well, it's all on that youth pastor.
Right.
And so I'm sure that those years of experience so actually probably come in handy.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, I can run groups for adults. They're just older teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as probably the people I'm kind of helping and overseeing and leading is pretty similar to the people that I was just leading in youth ministry, previously. And so, pretty natural. And again, thankfully, God, of course, brought us here, but also, I feel like gifted and called me to help connect people,
Nice.
which has been incredible.
That's cool. So what's your programming look like? Because I know a lot of people want to know that. There's tons of different ways to do youth ministry.
Yeah.
How do you actually do it here?
No, absolutely. I would say I've pretty much done everything in my years of ministry. I've tried everything. I've tried Wednesdays and Sundays and meeting together and split up and meeting the same night, but overlapping and meeting different nights and morning. And I mean, I think everything. If it's a possibility, I think we probably tried it. But with our ministry being a little smaller here, we meet all together, our middle school and high school. Our main youth group night is on Wednesday nights. And so we meet 6th through 12th grade, which of course has, again, its own set of challenges and struggles. And on a typical night, we average 25 to 30 students, which is really great to have those guys together. And of course, I've already been thinking and praying and working through what it looks like to split that up, but trying to understand too the idea of kind of critical mass and all the things that you have to work through. So overall works well. Our high schoolers, I will say in general, are very mature and gracious and actually pour into our middle schoolers quite a bit and kind of take on the responsibility of including them. And I'm sure there's plenty of times our middle schoolers drive our high schoolers insane, and me and our leaders, but it's all good. Of course.
The middle schoolers.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, they have so much energy and just love them. So that's our primary programming for the way our ministry is structured, and we do some Sunday school type stuff, also some Sunday morning class.
Cool. Cool. And so you being around here in Colorado Springs specifically for quite a long time, you've had the privilege of being a part of a thriving network.
Yeah.
You've seen, we've talked over the years about how it's kind of had its ebbs and flows over the years, but you've been a part of it for a good number of those years that it's existed. So take us back to that. Like, how did you originally get connected to the network? What's it meant to you over these years as well?
Yeah. So it was early on in my time of ministry that some guys that I had connected with somewhat quickly had invited me to be a part of that network. And those early years at that point for quite a while, it was 30, 40, 50 strong, which was really exciting at that point. They called it The Link. And most of the time they had it structured where we would meet together once a month on probably a Thursday, and everyone would bring their own lunch. Typically we would meet at the same church for quite a while, and then they would bring in, of course, different speakers or have different discussions as networks do. Mm-hmm. Lots of different kind of opportunities. But man, even from the very beginning, it was a lifesaver, because I was young in ministry, new in ministry, and feeling like I had people that had a general idea of what I was facing that weren't directly connected with where I was became a huge blessing. And I remember some of those guys who were veterans in youth ministry at the time really, of course, pouring into me, having some opportunities at some one-on-one lunches and sessions where I was, I'm just overwhelmed and in some ways drowning and all the things, and those guys investing in me. Really, I attribute that to the reason that I'm still in youth ministry, because I feel like if there were seasons that if I didn't have those guys, that I would have hung it up and felt burnt out and overwhelmed and not qualified and all the things that, of course, the enemy continues to try to tell us. I would have, I think, believed a lot more of those lies, and probably, I don't know, be working at some, who knows, tech company, maybe Apple. That would have been fun.
That works.
The discounts. So, because they've already got way too much of my money and yeah.
Yeah.
So of course, the network, transitioned in leadership over the years. lots of people coming and going, as is the case with youth ministry. And so some of the people that really were instrumental in leading that early on moved on. And so then it just changed, of course, over the years to the point where we even got to COVID. And that was, of course, just like everything, that was such a challenge and struggle. And there were times, literally, there were maybe 3 of us in a coffee shop as a part of that network. And thankfully, God has allowed that to rebuild to 20 or 30 on an average time where we meet together once a month. So still try to do the same, where a lot of discussion, a lot of opportunity to pray for one another. But of course, when it's available, I like to bring somebody in, because I know I'm still not the expert. I've learned things, maybe learn more what not to do than what to do. But it's been a godsend, I think.
That's cool. Yeah. So not only on this podcast, of course, Student Ministry Connection, we want to connect you with each other and encourage you to be connected with each other, but also from my work with National Network of Youth Ministries, also all about connecting. So a lot of times I have conversations with network coordinators who are just starting to do something, or maybe they've been in a network in the past and they're like, I'm a little hesitant because it kind of got off the rails. So from your experience, what's been some of the best ways for you guys to stay focused on what you're supposed to be focused on as a network, rather than kind of going in all these other directions that could eventually disband a network? How do you keep it healthy?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think we really have tried to land on the idea of, again, the connection piece. We meet right now on the first Thursday of each month at 10 a.m., and we try to do that intentionally so that our people can connect with one another on much smaller levels, either before that meeting or after at lunch, or we even challenge them. I challenge them pretty much every month to set up a time to meet with someone else in this room, either a group of 2 or 3 or 4, and do some life together. And so I think it, is definitely built around relationship, but we also don't want it to become something where it's always a commercial or a selling tactic, or somebody comes in. Of course, there's so many ministries, faith-based and even non-faith-based, and for-profit and non-profit, and all these things that have good things going on. And we want to allow those ministries to share what's happening, so that if our youth pastors can utilize those things, great. But we just don't want it to be like, hey, every time you show up, there's somebody else here trying to kind of peddle their ministry in some way. And again, we know that all those things are good, but just trying to protect that. So we try to highlight, give one ministry an opportunity to be highlighted each month. And of course, as we grow, right now it's still one big circle, but I know we're going to get into that threshold where we're really going to have to be more intentional about kind of table groups and different things. And so we always do that at the end of our time. We try to break up into those groups of 2 or 3 just for some more intimate discussion and prayer. But I would say that's kind of the way. And then really just trying to encourage and challenge people with the value of that network. We have a number of large churches in our area, which of course are a huge blessing at times. A lot of those large churches have youth ministry teams. They have youth ministry staff, several staff or several campuses even. And of course they're a huge blessing, but in a lot of ways, those people sometimes don't perceive that they need them. And they do have a lot of good connection and community inside their staff teams, which praise God for that. But that's not the average youth pastor. Right. And so a lot of youth ministry leaders they feel alone. They feel like they're the one, sure, they have their volunteer teams, and 100% praise God for that. But they, they're carrying the weight of the responsibility of ministry. And so, but we also need, we need the wisdom from those larger ministries and the different roles that lots of their staff are in. And we need the wisdom of people who are bivocational. And we got a handful of people. That's one of the biggest challenges is with our meeting time. It is not super friendly to bivocational, and that's a challenge. I know if we switch gears and let's do it on a Thursday night, then I think we'd miss out on lots of people because of family and stuff. So I know there's not a perfect scenario, but kind of everywhere in between. And then I am thankful that we have a lot of ministries that are parachurch. That's the word I'm looking for, that are involved with our network. We have camps that are a blessing, and we have people that come from FCA, and we've had Young Life, and we've had our local pregnancy center, Life Network, that always tries to send people. And so, again, all of those become a huge resource where, sure, it's a blessing to people inside the church directly working with students, but also knowing there's so many other people working with students in other contexts.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love when I talk with other networks and network coordinators around the state, and a lot of times they ask me, they're like, what's a healthy network look like and everything? And it's like, well, look down at the Springs. They're doing it right. Because you guys have, not only is it what you do is healthy, but I love that you guys have intentionally reached out to FCAs and Young Lifes and other organizations like that are also doing youth ministry.
Yeah.
And even the pregnancy center, like that's a youth ministry arm that a lot of times we don't even think about, but they're working with teenage moms.
Absolutely.
And like they're on the front lines of youth ministry.
Yeah. And our pregnancy center here has had a part of their organization called Education for a Lifetime that a lot of our youth pastors are plugged into and get to go into the schools and teach in the health classes. Really great curriculum. And so that's been, of course, just an avenue into the schools. And so I really appreciate them as a whole, but also that they're very connected and they want to be an ongoing resource to all the churches in the area.
That's really cool. So you mentioned one of the big reasons why networks are important is because of the loneliness that you could easily feel in ministry. And I think right alongside that is another organization, another ministry that you're connected with PACT. Tell us about PACT. I think you're probably the first person we're going to have this conversation about PACT on the podcast. So many of our longtime listeners maybe have not heard about it, but what's it all about and why is it so important to taking care, especially of those lonely or hurting youth pastors?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So PACT Ministry is an organization that I've been a part of for, I want to say about 7 years. I don't actually know exactly when I first got introduced to PACT Ministry, but they were started out of the Atlanta area by a good friend of mine named Matt Brinkley some 28 years ago. And the heart of PACT Ministry is coaching, and it specifically is really youth ministry and youth pastor focused, that youth pastors can coach youth pastors. And in a perfect world, we say that one of our goals is to have enough coaches around the country that the most anyone would have to drive to meet in person with a person is an hour. And so we're not there yet, but yeah, PACT has been a huge blessing. So PACT stands for prayer, accountability, care, and training. And so those are the 4 things we really want to just be able to provide in an ideal situation. Of course, sometimes we utilize technology and Zoom and things like that when there's not a coach nearby. But our heart is for youth ministry leaders, youth pastors to be healthy. And we know that if they are healthy, then they're going to be able to be much more likely to lead healthy ministries and have healthy marriages and have healthy families. And we really want to focus on not just the ministry aspect, but just life and the personal pieces and marriage and parenting and help them with whatever, and even dealing with finances at times and all those things, so that the things that oftentimes burn out youth ministry leaders or even cause them sometimes to fall into, some broken, immoral situations, we want to work through and talk through and address those issues.
Yeah.
And so I have, the opportunity to give some time to PACT Ministry. I'm our Colorado Regional Director. Of course, that's a volunteer role for what I'm doing, but has been a huge blessing. And I'm just thankful that, some guys years ago told me about this organization, and I got to be a part of it, go through some training to coach others and be a part of what they call their roundtable each year that's coming up here in just a few weeks in Atlanta. And really some of those guys have become some of my closest kind of ministry friends that, again, have not only helped me in seasons of challenge and struggle and transition, but also has given me some opportunity to pour into others. So yeah, it's developing those coaching relationships that ultimately we hope and pray will affect the kingdom.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, ever since I learned about PACT, like the more and more I learn about it, it just goes hand in hand with what we do at NNYM.
Yeah.
Like we believe in the unity within the church, the importance of a group, and then PACT comes along and does the one-on-one.
Yeah.
And when I think if a youth pastor is in a good, healthy situation with the group and has someone that they can count on one-on-one, man, they're set up for success.
Yeah.
They're set up to thrive. And that's what we want. So we know networks are, the really expensive price of free to be a part of. How much does PAC cost? And good coaching out there is sometimes expensive. How much does it cost?
Yeah, we make everyone sign a 10-year deal for $10,000, and they have to commit to. No, I'm just kidding. No, that is absolutely one of the biggest blessings of PAC ministry is that the organization as a whole, wants to offer that coaching for free. And so we do that by utilizing youth pastors who are willing to donate their time and volunteer their time to coach others. And the training is offered to them for free. Of course, that costs some money, but there's a lot of great supporters out there. And then, as we train those youth pastors, we look for people that typically have been in ministry for at least about 7 years, close to at least. We know that that's not always a perfect number, but at least have a few years of ministry under their belt and then are in a place where, of course, we want healthy people to coach. And so there's seasons where people have been coaching and they've stepped out, for a season and then been coached by others or poured into. But it's the heart of it is free. And I know there's great organizations out there that offer coaching and they charge what they have to charge, which I understand. And I know that they're valuable. But we also realize that, again, in a lot of contexts, especially sometimes some smaller churches with smaller budgets, that the coaching and training of a youth pastor falls down the priority list. And some churches just can't do that or at that point choose not to do that. So the heart is that we can meet with people for free. So yeah, there's two sides of that. Mm-hmm. The youth pastor who's coaching has to be willing to not make money on that, and give some time, but also the person being coached, thankfully, gets to be blessed by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's huge, especially in our world where I know that there's more and more youth leaders that are stepping into it and don't have the privilege of having a college education or a lot of training under their belt and everything. And so for organizations that are able to offer some people to come alongside them for free.
Yeah.
And especially if they are at a church situation where they just don't have the money for whatever reason,
right.
There are organizations out there like PAC that are willing to say, hey, that's not an issue.
Yeah, I know of so many people over the years that have, of course, some have got to be trained well and go to Bible college and seminary and all these things, and then even maybe do a great internship opportunity where they're learning a ton. But I also know plenty of people who, have stepped into leading youth ministry as a little bit later in life or as a second career or coming out of some other thing and, usually started as a volunteer and then, stepped into a role of sometimes paid, sometimes continued volunteer leader in that ministry. But knowing that everyone is from kind of these different situations, yeah, we want to connect people with people who've been in ministry and done it. And of course, I'll be the first to tell you, and I know all of my friends with PACT would be the first to tell you that they don't have it all figured out, but we want to just kind of walk through life with people and get to meet together. So yeah, cool. It's been incredible. And yeah, if you're interested in anything else that PACT offers, pactministry.org really would be the place to start. And if you're looking to find a coach or even interested in what it would look like to be a part of that coaching process, check that out.
Yeah. That's cool. And I'd say even if you have the college education, you have many, many years of experience. So it's not just about practical kind of ministry programming kind of questions. It's also about, man, I'm struggling with a leader or I'm struggling personally or kind of the whole gamut of what coaching could look like is any of those kind of questions. And we, like you said, we just want to make sure that people are healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're thriving and youth leaders because the only way that we're going to reach all these teenagers is through healthy youth leaders.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I love NNYM, PACT, and so many other ministries that are about creating healthy youth leaders.
Yeah, and even over the last few years, just the partnership of NNYM and PACT has been a blessing. Several NNYM people have gone through some of the PACT training and been a part of the roundtable, and of course, for me personally, just developing some of those friendships, but also knowing that the heart is to create healthy leaders who, as they disciple others and raise up leaders in their own churches, that they're doing that in a healthy way, and the kingdom is way better for it. And again, I couldn't imagine, where I would be if it weren't for certain people pouring into me, both through the network, through PACT, and then even, some people outside of that. I don't think I would currently be serving in youth ministry. I think I would have found something easier, like rocket science.
Yeah. It's probably one of the only things that's equivalent. I don't know.
That's right. That's right.
So, Dustin, it's been great to talk through those things. I just want to give you an opportunity here at the end just to share anything else that you'd like to with our audience, any encouragements that you want to leave everybody with today.
Yeah. I so much have a heart for youth ministry leaders, youth pastors, youth leaders, and of course I have a heart for students, but I know that, back to what we've been talking about this whole time, is when people can be healthy, then they're going to be in such a better spot when they can be a healthy husband or wife and a healthy parent, not perfect, but healthy. And when they can ideally, in their situation, be in a healthy church, that's not always in their control, but they have pieces of that and they can speak into that. And I do believe in longevity in ministry. And when people can be at a place for a long time, that's incredible, that they can really grow some deep roots and do what God has called them to do. And so I think more than anything, it sounds so basic, but it would just be to keep going and seek others, rely on others, lean on others in your church, outside of your church, in your family, outside of your family, all those things, because we're not meant to do any part of our faith alone, but especially leading in ministry. And so I know that's, Colorado Springs is not a huge city, but it's a good sized city. And so I know there's so many more challenges sometimes when it comes to more rural and small towns that make it harder to connect. But man, find some people in ministry at the very least, even if that's utilizing Zoom and FaceTime and those type of things to do life with people. But that would be my biggest challenge. Of course, keep your eyes on Jesus. I know, again, that's it's we know that, but we also lose focus. We know the right words, and so I think that's what I got.
Cool.
So,
well, I'm sure people are going to want to reach out to you, and they've connected with you a little bit on the podcast here, but they want to connect with you further. What's the best way for people to get in touch? Maybe have follow-up questions, or just want to pick your brain a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always reachable by email. So my email address is Dustin, DUSTIN, @hotschurch.org. So HOTS is Heart of the Springs, but hotschurch.org. And of course, if you have questions about networks or coaching, anything like that, of course, National Network of Youth Ministry is a great place to start if you're looking for a network. Ideally, they're connected to NNYM, but PACT Ministry is a great place for coaching. But I always love to connect with new people. Just got to talk to a guy on the phone earlier today who's looking to bring a group out from Georgia out here to Colorado Springs and just do some ministry. And so I never talked to him before, but through a mutual friend, we connected, and ideally, we're going to be able to help them out. So
cool.
I think that's what I got.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Dustin, for being on, but also for your partnership over the years, and just pray that God continues to bless your ministry.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode. If you want to connect more with Dustin, you can find his email address in the show notes, as well as other links that were mentioned in this episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, I want to ask you to do just a couple things that will help us. First, please share this with other youth leaders you think would benefit from hearing it. And second, please leave us a positive review on your favorite podcast app. Both of these will help others discover the podcast, but it also helps me continue to bring on great guests. And if you want to go further and support my ministry with National Network of Youth Ministries, serving on either my prayer support team or my financial support team, you can go to nnym.org/Steve Cullum, or just follow the links in the show notes. This week, I'm off to a retreat for Colorado youth leaders, and then I'll be both at the PACT Roundtable and then the DYM 100 Roundtable in November. If you're also there and we've not met in person yet, please come and say hi. I would love to meet you, but also let me know that you listen to the podcast. And as a reminder, the sponsor for this episode was G-Shades. If you're looking for a solid gospel-focused curriculum, check out gshades.org and use the promo code CONNECTION to save 10% off your order. I'll be back in a couple weeks with the next episode, but until then, be sure to stay connected and may God bless your ministry.